It was a very low impoverished area of the city, just a couple of blocks from Evansville Housing, Public Housing Authority, and so growing up, my parents, I've always had, grew up with two parents in the home, and working parents. They worked full time during the day, and of course we spent outside of that, our time was spent in church. And I can imagine, I felt like many times Wednesdays and Sundays, there were full days that we were worshiping and serving people in the community. And so growing up, I was very active in a lot of the activities, but neighborhood was, living on Mulberry Street was about a sense of neighborhood. My grandmother, for a short period of time, lived next door to me, and so my aunts and cousins, we spent a lot of time together growing up. A couple of my cousins are like sisters because, again, we've been connected for a very long time. And so I counted a privilege to the early start that I had on Mulberry Street, and which later evolved to other neighborhoods in the center city of Evansville. I moved to another part of the city, later in life, of course, after I got married. And of course, my parents moved a couple of times, but we have remained in the center city of the city, which is kind of in the 417711314 neighborhoods. And that's where I reside now, in zip codes 47714. We're in an area that we feel like, there's room for opportunity for growth and further development. But I enjoy where I live. But again, it was primarily where my husband and I, thought it would be great for us to start a family. I have always been in Evansville, born and raised here. The only time I went away was to college. I attended Kentucky State University in Frankfort, Kentucky, and after I completed my work at Kentucky State, returned home and started my master's at the University of Evansville. I majored in biology. That's, it's crazy. For a very long time, I wanted to be a pediatrician. But as time grew on and as I developed skill sets, I knew that that wasn't my calling. And so I began to look at health service administration, and that's what I mastered in at the University of Evansville, with the hopes of then being in a nursing home administration. Worked in a nursing home environment for a couple of years and realized, again, that was not really what was fueling me every day. And so from that point, when I realized I would be better off working in youth in an education environment, I've been in the nonprofit sector for over 20 years, and pretty proud of that. My first introduction to politics really was during my college days. I spent a lot of time through my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta sorority, working in what we call our social action, committee work. And so I was very involved. I went to Delta Days at the state capitol and also to DC for, Delta Days in the nation's capital, and really had an opportunity to be up front and talk with legislators about making meaningful changes that were important to me in our sorority. And so that continued on. And so I was very engaged there and had opportunities to serve at leadership levels in my sorority, driving the social action agenda for the state of Indiana. And so that's probably where I first was introduced to that work. And then it carried on. When I returned home, I ran for school board. Had set out in my mind, I wanted to make a difference when I came back home. And so that was my first opportunity to run for office. I was unsuccessful. But a few years after that, then I was approached about running for city council. Ran for city council against Missy Mosby, and I was unsuccessful at that time, and really kind of gave it up. Hadn't really thought any more about being in politics, but stayed very active again in my sorority, in the social action work that we were doing. Then Roy Sutton, one day I received a call. He was the county council member that had been on council for nearly 18 years, called and said, "Would you be interested in my seat? I'm relocating." And I began to contemplate that opportunity and very quickly made that decision to take his seat, which also happened to be an election year. And later that year I was elected and was elected 4 terms after that. Volunteering again, and kind of through my sorority, specifically, working with political leaders. Also had involvement in our local party. I'm a precinct committee member, but then also I served on the Vanderbilt County Council for 12 years, and again was recently elected last year for a 4th term. But so that's been the extent of my political work here in the community. I think more than anything, learned how government worked for the people, and budget management, and personnel matters, and understanding the kind of the dynamics of functioning government and effective government, and the service that we have to render to the residents of this community. And I think also, understanding that, I was on the council, I was in the minority in terms of our party. And so being able to develop relationships across party lines to be able to work collaboratively in a way for the greater good were some of the key things that I was able to learn in my experience on council. More than anything, I have always had a desire and knew that there was something more for me to do. Professionally and in the political space. When the opportunity presented itself, when Mayor Winnecke announced, it opened the door, and it was an opportunity. And so I really had to give some deep thought, and I did take my time in thinking through, is this the right time for me and my family to pursue this opportunity? And after great thought and a lot of conversations, I landed to that decision. But I knew that, again, there was something more that I could do and give to our community, and the mayor was one vehicle for me to do that, and so I was encouraged and inspired to do so. Normally at the Victory Theater or National Events Plaza, but for me, many times I've heard over years, good things don't come from Bosse High School, and it's an outstanding school. And I wanted to highlight, number one, its historic nature, but also show young people that are there and others throughout this community that what's possible. And that school developed who I am today in many regards. And so I really wanted to celebrate that and make it feel like a sense of community. And that was the end result when you see over 900 people were in that place on Monday during the inauguration. I was involved in a great deal. So I played 3 sports. I ran track. I played basketball, volleyball. I dabbled in softball for a little while, but I realized I couldn't do softball and track at the same time. I participated in our drama club and was also in the choir. And so I performed my senior year. I shared that during the inauguration. I was the lead role in Dorothy and the Wiz in my senior year. So I was very active and always have been active, even at the college level. Also had that continued on where I was in choir there. I went on vocal scholarship to Kentucky State University. Oh, I was just feeling excitement more than anything, but really I was humbled and just honored that the people believed in me enough to elect me, and that I still have that feeling even today. It's very humbling to know that that you have people behind you, and that they again have a sense of trust and that you will do and serve them well. And I count it a privilege because as the last 12 years on the council, I take this job's political space very seriously, and so I want to do the best that I can for the people of the community. And so having that that night to be elected, it meant a whole lot for, I think, my community, my family, and I think it's an opportunity for continued growth in our city. Neighborhood revitalization for me is going to continue to be important. Public safety, continue to develop, youth and education in our community and how we can support development of our youngest citizens, and then economic development. We know that if we want to continue to grow as a community, we're going to have to continue to see economic development in our community. And so those are all areas I think are really pretty standard, I think, for any mayor. But again, we're going to put our stake probably in more so neighborhood revitalization and how we can build out cultural districts throughout our community and ensure that we lift up all families in this community. I really admire the work that Mayor Winnecke, did in this community. We just a couple of blocks over, the IU Med School, just that project alone was transformative for our downtown, but for our community as a whole. And I think there's going to be some more, announcements around the work that, IU will do here in our community, not only to retain talent, but to advance the expertise that we need to continue to address mental health and other issues in our community. And so I think that's one of the things he did really well in terms of building and strengthening the business community and public-private partnerships in the development that has occurred downtown. I think, and for me, broadening that, we're going to continue to see downtown development. I hope, the riverfront is an opportunity for our administration to begin to further, development there. But branching out from downtown and supporting the neighborhoods adjacent to downtown will be important to my administration. And so, again, it goes back to how do we further define, these neighborhoods and cultural districts on the south and the north side of our community as well as the west, in addition to downtown. And so I'm excited about that opportunity. I think the other thing, we know that public safety is always going to be at top of mind. I feel like it's the first job of government, is a safe community, and so we have to continue to address the root causes of crime in our community. Would I say that the past administration did a poor job of that? Absolutely not. I think we have to continue. I think there's a lot of great nonprofit organizations. Office and Services is going to take prevention, treatment, and interventions and system changes really to begin to address some of the complex issues that we're faced with. And Mayor Winnecke put a lot of those coalitions of people together, and we're going to continue to sustain those groups, like your Commission on Homelessness and the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council. So those will carry over into the work that we will do. But again, Mayor Winnecke set the foundation for that work to start. Humbling feeling to be in this place. I've told this story many a times. I've walked past the wall of mayors that are just outside in front of the mayor's office, and the faces all look the same. And I've said to myself, will this ever change? And I never believed that for myself, that I could potentially be the reason why that would change. And so I count it a privilege to have this responsibility, and I will take the job very seriously and do the best that I can, because again, this opportunity may never come again, and so we want to be sure that we are listening to the residents of this community, responding in the proper manner, but running an effective government, and offering the best service we possibly can. Early on, my parents instilled in me as a young girl to serve others. That's something growing up in the church. That's what our focus was, and so that has never left me, and it never will. And so that's really what has inspired me to be in this line of work, and I will continue to give my all to it. The thing I'm looking forward to the most is, again, goes back to neighborhoods and how we can continue to raise and uplift all families in our community, whether that's beautifying our parks and getting them to a standard that everyone can be proud of, increasing housing in areas that have been underinvested in, and ensuring that more people in our community are housed with permanent housing. And then also just, again, further fleshing out cultural districts where there's more bustling small businesses and opportunities, again, for people to thrive in our community.